So thank you for coming back and watching the rest of the segments on Bane. This is where we started off with a plain out-of-box figure ready to paint. And this is where we left off on the last video. We finished up the boots. We've got them coated with a super Mr. Clear and it looks really good. So I went back in later and I added some semi-gloss to the leather areas to make it more leather-like. But now we want to get to this. We've got to get to the pants and the details on the pants and the shirt. So I've already sped up the time lapse on the video because it's just so extremely long, the process of doing so, and I want you to get the most out of it without having to spend 4 hours with me. So in the next 26 minutes, I'll take you through the steps to paint not only the pants but the shirt. So I've already taken the process of masking out the boots and the belt. The belt because I want to keep it in the silver. Again, I want to go for contrast. And of course the boots because I don't want to ruin the work that I've already put into these. We only want to concentrate on the pants. So we're going to use these synthetic brushes again. I've changed sizes on these. And we're going to do several washes of paint. We're going to start off with the same colors we used the last time. The reddish brown, the yellow, and the regular brown paint. And these are nothing more than craft paints, except for the yellow, that's a tester's paint. They're all acrylic. I just thinned them down. And again, we're going to be working in layers. It's not going to cover all in the first pass. Now, I did spray the figure with the Super Mr. Clear, or Mr. Super Clear, however you want to say it. And in any case, it's ready to go. It's got plenty of tooth on here. There's no need to use any primer paint. It's going to work just fine the way it is. So I'm going to let you watch the rest of the video because it's all pretty much a repetition of the last video as far as the technique. There's no dry brushing involved yet. All of this is wet paint onto the surface. And again, we're going in layers. While one side dries, we go to the next side. Just to give you a heads up, I'm going for leather on the accessories as much as possible. I want to have a contrast, so I want the leather to stand out against the black. Of course, I'm not going to leave the pants in black. I'm going to go for a different color, and I'll show you that in just a moment. But the leather will still stand out against the next color we're going to add. And don't worry about painting onto the pants themselves, because we are going to clean that up with the color that we replace onto the pants. So once again, we're going to be working in layers, one section at a time, and then we're going to come back and clean up any overpaint that we did on any other surfaces, because we are going to be adding other colors and we can cover up any mistakes. So I have already added a red wash to the belt and the other parts of the leather, and I'm cleaning off the brush as you can see here on this paper towel. And I'm going to go into a black wash. And again, a wash is a very thin diluted paint and it should be transparent. The color underneath should show through what you're applying. Using the sponge in a stipple technique, I then remove the excess, leaving behind a texture from that black wash, giving the leather a characteristic of texture that would be more characteristic of leather itself. It's just the same thing that I did on the boots in the last video. If you want more detail to that, just rewatch the last clip or the last video and you'll be able to understand precisely what I'm doing here. I've only sped up the camera just because there is so many more details and so much more to do on the figure, and I don't want to delay the process any longer. Again, if you go over onto the pants themselves, don't worry about it. We're going to be covering all of that up with other paint. In the meantime, let's just concentrate on getting the texture correct on the leather so that we don't have to repeat it. Already applied another layer of Mr. Super Clear to protect the work I've already done, and I'm going to go back in with the same brown paint and adding some white to get it into a very creamy look so I can get the highlights taken care of in a dry brush. So once again, working in layers in dry brush, and don't worry if you go over onto the pants. We just want to highlight the texture now that is on the leather, give it some more depth. So this is one of those cases where you can tailor it to the look you want. If the leather is not bold enough or has a depth in color, you can go back in and add another wash, either in the red or the black, to give it the tone that you need to have. Perhaps you like leather that's more in the gray, perhaps you like it more yellow. I like it a little bit more rich tones of red. Even though it is a worn piece, I still want it to have that rich leather look. Because I'm going for contrast, I then decided to add some olive green to continue the tones that are in the boot. And because I'm not worried about the pants, at least not yet, I'm going to paint right along the edge and fill it in with color, come back in with a wash and add some highlights to it, and then another wash in the black. So take your time and decide what colors you want to highlight. Decide what the main color is underneath as far as the pants, and then you can decide what colors your accessories are going to be. Once you've got all of that planned out, then your process is going to go really well. It's going to go that much smoother. But if you're planning as you go along, it can still work, no problem, but it is going to take you that much longer because you'll have to do a start and stop and find out what's going to look good and make a test with the color, and if it doesn't look good, you wipe it off and start over. But if you pre-plan it, then your process is going to go that much smoother. finishing up those details on the belt and other sections, then I decided to switch brushes to a chisel brush that's a little stiffer and it does have an end like a chisel, and I decided to do a dry brush on the pants just to see what it would look like in a gray. I did not want the black. It's just too oppressive, and it just really it's too dominant, and I really wasn't liking the way the dry brush was looking. It just made the pants look super worn out, and well, that just made it look dirty. I wanted more of a solid color, so I went back in and just did a test. I went ahead and added my color and painted them in all the way through onto the texture, and it looks that much better. So I went with a darker gray. Actually, this is too light of a gray, and it made a different look just by adding some black to that gray and toning it down. I did not want it to be stark white or light gray. I wanted them to be more like fatigues, but I did not want the oppressive black color. And this is what it turned out to look like. So this is what it looks like all in gray. It looks better in person. The camera doesn't really capture it. And then I added some highlights with some dry brushing, and it was time to go to the shirt. And I decided to go with the olive green to give it more of that military look, because he pretty much is a soldier for hire or mercenary. So in any case, I went ahead and painted the shirt right on his back there, all of the edges. So I did paint the skin tone that's on there now, and no big deal because I'm going to end up painting that with the true skin tone that I want. So let's peel away all this blue tape and let's find out what it finally looks like without all of this. Let's get the true look. It definitely took quite a few hours to get to this point, and I hope you do like what it looks like now. It's totally different. It looks nothing like the original, which is good because now I've got two of these and I've got two variants. And actually I like this second image of the Bane much better than the first one that I have. Now if you've noticed, all of the tape that I am pulling off is tape that I cut into strips myself. I didn't buy it like this. You can, and it's actually expensive, but it's best to just take a wide piece of tape, 1 inch, inch and a half, cut out a piece you need, lay it down on a cutting board, and then take a ruler and your X-Acto knife and cut out the different widths that you need. Cut some narrow, some wider, and that will actually allow you to manipulate that tape as you wrap it around certain areas to be able to make turns and curves. It's just much easier and it's less expensive. So this is what we've got now. This is what he looks like. We've got the painted shirt. It's Tester's olive green, I'm sorry. And I've already sprayed this down with the Mr. Super Clear. So now I'm going to go back in and touch up any of those details where I lost my contrast And then I'm going to go back in and add some dry brushing to those to bring out the details on top of those. Take your time and patience with these small details. You can truly get lost in all of these details. There's just so many sculpting details that are in these pieces. And now, if you have trouble viewing some of those, then I do recommend you pick up a pair of magnifying lenses to be able to see them that much better. You'll be able to be more precise to get into those tight areas. And this is the time when you can be as detailed as you want. And no, you don't have to use black on everything. You can actually use the same colors, just don't thin them out, and you can get some different tones. Go back into some of those details and pull out some more character into the different articles of clothing or the different objects that are on the belt. It all depends how much time you want to spend on this. So far, I've spent 6 hours up to this point, aside from the boots. Now I'm just doing some last minute touch-ups and cleanup on these leather pieces, simply because I don't want to go back in and have to do these after I finish up all the details on the skin tone, because I want to keep a consistency in color and I don't want to have to remix paints to go back and do touch-ups. And you can already see that I went ahead and cut down some more strips of blue tape, and I've already prepped the arms for painting. Now, in prepping those, I just put them in as close to the edge as possible. So I am going to have some overpaint on some of those edges, but then I can clean those up. And because that's a separate project in its own, then the tones and colors that I will be using on that are going to be pre-mixed just for that. Now, any of these tiny little details are going to make a big difference in your final image, especially if you're doing a commission job. You definitely want to take your time and clean up any of those edges. So by now you've seen what a big difference any of those teeny tiny details are going to make. And here's a few that I missed. These little studs that are in the belt. Just those 2 little points of silver make a big difference. Now, there's one more detail that many times we overlook, and that is usually the shoes, or I should say the soles of the shoes. And I did see that on somebody else's custom, and I was really impressed the way it looks. So I've actually done that on a lot of them, and I went ahead and did it to Bane as well, because there's plenty of tread at the bottom of his boots. So I turned the figure upside down. I took a wider brush, I took some of that brown and I lightened it up just a tad, and I did a dry brush on the texture on the boots just to give it that look like he's actually been walking somewhere. It looks so awesome. one last detail, as I mentioned before, I went back in and I added a Modelmasters clear coat, the semi gloss, onto the leather because I wanted that leather look. I like that shiny leather and I wanted the contrast between that and the pants. I didn't like the matte look on the leather, and now by having it shiny you can really see a texture contrast. So I added it not only to the leather on the legs and the belt, but the boots themselves, and it's a big difference. I really was much happier with this result than the first one. So, and that's the thing about customizing. You always see something you can change, and the time to do it is when you've got it in front of you. So I'm going to leave you with some video of this finished segment. There's too much to show, so I split it up into one other. This is what we ended up with, and now it's time to paint that skin tone. You see I've already done it, but now I gotta show you how I got there. That's another long video, and I want you to come back because you've got to learn this technique. It looks so good as a finished product. In the meantime, please like, comment, and of course subscribe because there's one more video coming. In the meantime, enjoy your customizing.